What if your ancestor hungrily cracked open the skull of a fellow human, not in malice, but in desperation? With that question echoing in your mind, let's plunge into the shadowy depths of Neanderthal cannibalism, its evidence, motivations, and haunting implications. In the shadowed depths of Moulagersi Cave, in the Ardèche region of southern France, archaeologists made one of the most unsettling discoveries ever tied to our Neanderthal cousins. Scattered across the cave floor lay the remains of 6 individuals, 2 adults, 2 adolescents, and 2 children. Their bones were not resting in peace. They were broken, stripped, and altered with a precision that left little doubt about the intention. Skulls were deliberately cracked open, tongues severed, long bones smashed apart to reach the marrow hidden inside. The pattern was chillingly familiar, the same method hunters used when processing animals for food. This was not a ceremony. It was not symbolic. It was survival in its rawest form, carried out with urgency and efficiency. Comparative studies of the bones confirmed what the eye could already see. The Neanderthal remains were treated no differently than those of deer or other prey. They were defleshed, fractured, and mixed seamlessly with animal bones, making it impossible to separate the hunters from the hunted. Deep in the limestone chambers of El Cedrón Cave in northern Spain, archaeologists unearthed a haunting scene etched into bone. The remains of both children and adults told a story of desperation carved with stone tools. Cut marks lined the surfaces of ribs and limbs. Long bones bore percussion pits and flaking scars where they had been struck, splintered, and cracked apart. Under magnification, conchoidal fractures revealed the same precision Neanderthals used when processing animals. But here, the prey was their own. Even more chilling was the microscopic record hidden in their teeth. Enamel growth lines displayed signs of nutritional stress during childhood, interruptions in development caused by famine or scarcity. These Neanderthals had endured hunger before. When the crisis reached its peak, survival left them with few choices. The evidence paints a bleak but human picture. At El Cedrón, cannibalism was not ritual, nor cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was necessity, a grim strategy to endure in a world where food could vanish and winter's grip was merciless. In the dark chambers of the Goyet Caves in Belgium, archaeologists uncovered a record of Neanderthal life that was as brutal as it was undeniable. Dated to between 40,500 and 45,500 years ago, the bones revealed a pattern too systematic to ignore. Long limbs were carefully disarticulated, muscles stripped away, and marrow-rich shafts cracked open for every last calorie. The skulls bore traces of deliberate opening, and fragments of bone were later reshaped into tools, retouchers used to sharpen stone edges. What makes Goyet chilling is the way Neanderthal bodies were treated no differently than reindeer or horse. The same butchery marks, the same processing steps, the same placement among discarded animal remains. For the first time in Northern Europe, the evidence could not be brushed aside as accident or ritual. It was cannibalism, clear and deliberate. The Goyet discoveries force us to reconsider what survival meant at the edge of the Ice Age. To these Neanderthals, flesh was flesh, bone was bone, and the line between human and prey dissolved in the cold shadows of the cave. High above the Krapina River Valley in Croatia, one of the most famous Neanderthal sites has puzzled scientists for more than a century. Since its discovery in 1899, the cave has yielded hundreds of bone fragments, both animal and human, jumbled together in a chaotic mix. The Neanderthal remains tell a disturbing story. Long bones split open, skulls shattered, and in some cases, scorched by fire. But what does it mean? Some researchers argue that these were the traces of cannibalism, raw evidence of marrow extraction and brain consumption. Others see something more symbolic, perhaps a ritual practice of defleshing the dead, or a form of secondary burial in which the body was carefully dismantled before being laid to rest. The burn marks could be signs of cooking, or of ceremonial fire. The debate at Krapina remains unresolved, and that uncertainty is what makes the site so compelling. Were these Neanderthals desperate, driven by hunger in a brutal Ice Age landscape? Or were they shaping a ritual life we are only beginning to glimpse? one where death itself carried meaning beyond survival. When we sift through the scattered evidence of Neanderthal cannibalism, one question rises above all others. Why? At sites like Moulin-Gercy in France and El Cedron in Spain, the bones whisper of desperation. Tooth enamel carries scars of childhood hunger. Bodies show the telltale signs of malnutrition: thin bones, stunted growth, skeletal stress. In these contexts, cannibalism seems less like choice and more like grim necessity, a last resort in winters that offered no mercy. But not all evidence tells that story. At Krapina in Croatia, for instance, there is no clear sign of starvation. Instead, we see bones fractured and skulls defleshed in ways that seem deliberate, even ceremonial. Here, survival does not explain everything. Some researchers suggest ritual, acts that spoke to memory, reverence, or belief. This is the tension that defines the debate. Were Neanderthals merely starving hunters doing whatever it took to live another day? Or were they capable of symbolic acts, where consuming or dismantling the body carried meaning beyond hunger? The truth, as always, may lie in both. Step back from the caves, and a larger pattern begins to emerge. Neanderthal cannibalism was not one thing. It was many. In some cases, it was a brutal survival tactic, families consuming their own during winters when no other food remained. In others, it carried echoes of ritual, where the careful defleshing of skulls or bones might have been a symbolic act of mourning, remembrance, or belief. And in yet others, it bore the mark of violence, dominant groups asserting power over rivals, leaving broken bodies as proof of conquest. Anthropologists caution us not to fall into easy binaries. To ask whether Neanderthals practiced cannibalism for survival or ritual oversimplifies the reality. Human behavior, then as now, is layered, context-driven, and messy. Each cave, each bone fragment, must be read within its social and environmental moment. What the spectrum reveals is not savagery, but humanity, complexity, a versatility of response that mirrors our own species more than we might be comfortable admitting. When archaeologists turn to computer models, a striking picture emerges of how cannibalism might have functioned in Neanderthal society. The simulations separate two distinct patterns. Endocannibalism, the consumption of one's own kin, could serve dual purposes, either as a desperate nutritional strategy or as a ritualized way of caring for the dead. Exocannibalism, the eating of outsiders, was something different. A calculated act of dominance or resource management, stripping enemies of both life and flesh. The models reveal a sobering truth. In resource-starved landscapes, exocannibalism might offer short-term survival advantages. A rival group becomes both eliminated competition and an immediate food source. Yet, over time, this strategy carried hidden costs. Groups that relied on violence and cannibalism tended to isolate themselves, cutting off access to wider networks and the richer environments beyond. It raises a haunting question. Could such strategies have contributed to the slow unraveling of Neanderthal populations at the margins of Ice Age Europe? Cannibalism, as unsettling as it sounds, is not some anomaly confined to the dark corners of Neanderthal history. It threads through nature and human experience alike. Among chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, infanticide and occasional cannibalism are part of dominant struggles. In the modern era, the tragic story of the Donner Party, pioneers trapped in the Sierra Nevada in the winter of 1846, stands as a grim reminder that starvation can push even civilized communities toward the unthinkable. These parallels matter, because they force us to step back from the easy trap of moral judgment. What seems monstrous through modern eyes may have been pragmatic, even necessary, in prehistoric landscapes defined by scarcity, harsh winters, and fragile lifelines of survival. Context is everything. When we look at Neanderthal bones marked by cut lines or shattered for marrow, we are not staring into barbarity alone. We are looking at a spectrum of behaviors, some born of hunger, some of ritual, all part of the human condition. Long before Neanderthals walked the forests and valleys of Ice Age Europe, another human relative left behind a darker legacy. At Gran Dolina, in the Atapuerca Mountains of Spain, archaeologists uncovered remains nearly 850,000 years old, belonging to Homo antecessor, one of our earliest known ancestors in Europe. Among the bones lies a haunting detail: a decapitated toddler, its skull marked with precise cut lines, as if carefully defleshed. This was not an isolated act. Multiple skeletons show the same pattern: limbs stripped, bones broken from marrow, flesh consumed with a methodical consistency that mirrors the butchery of hunted animals. Such evidence suggests that cannibalism was not a desperate improvisation, but an established behavior, woven into the survival strategies, or perhaps even the social fabric, of these early humans. Gran Dolina whispers to us that the act of consuming kin or rivals is not a late aberration, but one of the earliest echoes of human behavior itself. Cannibalism may not have only been a matter of survival or ritual. It may also have carried deadly, long-term consequences. Modern parallels remind us of the forepeople in Papua New Guinea, whose ritual consumption of the dead spread kuru, a devastating prion disease. These pathogens, transmitted through brain and nervous tissue, quietly infiltrate communities, eroding them from within. Neanderthals, genetic studies reveal, lacked the protective PRNP gene variant that many modern humans now carry. This absence may have left them uniquely vulnerable. If prions spread through their groups, passed along in moments of desperation or tradition, the consequences could have been catastrophic. Communities already weakened by climate instability and competition might have been further undone by invisible killers carried in their own kin. In this sense, cannibalism may not only echo desperation or ritual, it may have hastened the end of our closest cousins. Cannibalism forces us to confront a disquieting truth. The human story is not one of simple progress toward morality or compassion. If Neanderthals, our closest kin, resorted to it, then this behavior cannot be dismissed as aberration or monstrosity. Instead, it reminds us that morality is never universal. It is born from circumstance, environment, and necessity. The shattered bones and cut-marked skulls of Neanderthals are not evidence of savagery, but of survival under brutal conditions. They tell us that desperation and ritual can blur into the same act, and in this recognition, we see something profoundly human. Neanderthals were not beasts. They were people, bound by culture, shaped by scarcity, and driven by needs we may never fully comprehend. Their choices, however grim, reflect the same spectrum of complexity that lives within us today. In that light, the story of Neanderthal cannibalism is not just about them. It is also about us. So, were Neanderthals cannibals? The evidence whispers a difficult truth. Yes, but not in the flat, one-dimensional way the word suggests. Cannibalism for them was not a single act with a single meaning. It was a mosaic of survival, ritual, violence, and nuance. In one place, hunger carved its mark into bones. In another, ritual gestures left behind their silent traces. What Mulagersi, El Cidrón, Goyet, and Krapina reveal is not a single story, but a tapestry stitched together from desperation, belief, and circumstance. And perhaps that is the most haunting lesson of all. These people, so close to us that fragments of their DNA still live within our own bodies, were neither saints nor monsters. They were human, caught in moments where the line between predator and prey blurred, where survival demanded choices that still unsettle us today. The bones they left behind are more than relics. They are echoes, asking us to reflect on what it truly means to be human. To ask ourselves whether we, placed in the same crucible of ice, scarcity, and fear, would have done differently. If you're still wondering who truly forged the line between human and animal, predator and prey, you are not alone. The questions linger, as haunting as the caves themselves. And if the shadows of prehistory captivate you, stay with us. At Prehistoric Shadows, we explore humanity's deepest echoes, hidden, haunting, and profoundly human.